As a South African, we are very blessed to have a rich, diverse culture, the Rainbow Nation, and with many cultures. And in Durban, where I live, it's a melting pot of an amazing array of different ideas and cultures. And I'm very blessed to be able to interact with my patients from many cultures and different races. Having worked outside the country as well, and in different parts of South Africa, it is my privilege to be able to understand and interact with different people from different backgrounds. It gives an amazing insight. And, if we talk about ADHD, there's a lot of differences of opinion just within one culture, within one family, between two parents having different ideas. So what I'd like to share with you, my perspective and understanding that I've gained over many years in helping you understand how different cultures, different backgrounds, whether you are of a different religion, how do you view ADHD and how does it affect your management and understanding of your child's problem? ADHD is essentially a genetic and a biological condition. It results, the genetics and the biological interplay of genetics and environment leads to a biological problem of self-control in the front part of the brain, where the frontal cortex is centered and the dopamine release and the control center. That is where the problem is. There are other reasons. There are problems that can happen during birth, pregnancy, and of course lead exposure, but those are very rare. In over 90% of cases, ADHD is a result of a biological condition. And this spreads and it is diverse across all cultures. Male, female, it has an equal incidence across different cultures, different areas of the world, every country. However, the way we interpret, the way we understand ADHD is looked at very differently. And my experience in following a lot of the American data, remember, there's more research done in ADHD in the United States than the rest of the world combined. So in my opinion, the Americans know a lot more about the condition. So if we talk about and think about how does a different culture, different family look, we look at things from different camera angles, and that's what makes it very interesting. My job is to help you understand from your perspective. I don't come with any preconceived notions or ideas or bias, and my kind of understanding is to help you from whatever background and whatever age generation, whether you're a millennial or a baby boomer. And we know that, previous generations, my upbringing, I'd never heard of ADHD until I got to medical school. Now, if I think back to my own experience, there would have been individuals at school with me that I can think back that had ADHD, but they were branded, they were misunderstood, they often left school prematurely, didn't fulfill the dreams that they could have. And when I share my experience with ADHD with parents, it's almost, you can see there's like a silence when I start to talk and help them understand. And there's a realization that often one of the parents has ADHD, and realizing the missed opportunities. So I'd like to share with you some of the kind of data that's available looking throughout the world. And this is a slide that looks at the incidence of ADHD. And if we look at the worldwide incidence of being around about 5 to 6%, but of course in different countries, depending on the criteria and how different schools and different systems, how the conservative, the supportive system in the countries, and as a result you see different symptoms. So you can see, in the age group, this was a group, the first slide was a global prevalence of adults aged 18 to 44, and this shows United States from 5.2, look at the Australians at 1.1, and in China at 1.8, in Iraq. So you can see, depending on the culture, how these problems are experienced and how they are sometimes, the symptoms are suppressed, depending on how ordered, how kind of authoritarian, how the schooling system works. I've attended some very interesting international congresses on the epidemiology of ADHD, how it kind of spreads and how it is distributed throughout the age range, the lifespan, as well as different countries. And in particular, that figure there in Brazil is very interesting. So you can see, in Europe, whether you go from west to east, north to south, there is a broad range. And in this slide, you will see here that this is a retrospective study looking at how ADHD emerged based on adults aged 18 to 44. See how that also differs. And of course, there isn't much data there in Africa, but we know that the incidence is probably very similar to the South American figures. And what I wanted to do is just show you how ADHD is definitely interpreted by different cultures differently. It's the way we perceive things, the way we look at things. And whether you're in a different school, high-functioning school, private school, non-private school, large classes, fewer classes, education makes a big difference. The number one factor is, does the symptoms of ADHD affect the individual? Is it impacting the family? Because the diagnosis depends on whether you're seeing things at home as well as school. Whether you have one child, two children, how do you compare? Families where there are other siblings, it's easier to compare. Where there is a well-structured environment, particularly where a mother has her hands on the reins of things, organizing things, And also I see, in my own practice, different cultures where parents are very attentive, they're overprotective, they do so much for their children at home. They don't tend to see the symptoms until they get to school, where they've got to now kind of do things on their own. They've got to be more independent. And where there are other cultures where children are required to be very independent early on, and they make that transition very easily at school. Behavior, control at home, control at school, and also by communities. Religion plays a big role as well in the way we view things. So at the end of the day, from my side as a pediatrician, I would like to say to parents, the fundamental part of ADHD is, there are symptoms that all of us have. Who doesn't say some things that they regret later, procrastinate things? Maybe they're absent-minded, they leave things to the last moment. Maybe they don't have quite the same insight they should do. Memory losses, disorganization, a bit busy. All of us have those at some point, depending on our daily lives and our environment. But when they happen so extreme that they have a huge impact on the child's life at home, family life, as well as impact school, friends, family, socializing. As adults, the way you drive, the way you control your own money, the way you interact with relationships. So it all depends on how much harm it causes to the individual. And when it does, that is when it needs treatment. So I'm just like to share my perspective. If you have any thoughts, please get hold of me.